Hiya guys, welcome to my Celica GT4 build series, and today we're going to be fabricating the last couple of panels before we get ready for paint. So there's going to be hammering, drilling, cutting and welding. So there's going to be some flashing lights and, if you're lucky, some funky beats. This is episode 15. Hi guys, it's John from BD. It is Sunday morning, the only chance I get maybe once or twice a month to be able to work on a Celica. I come in on a Sunday just to get it done. And today we're going to be sorting out, which I'm hoping is the last bit of welding on the underbody. I've been waiting for the welder to do it for me, but they're just so busy at the moment. Everyone's just really busy, aren't they? So I'm going to have a go myself because I've been welding up an R34 Skyline during normal hours for a customer, and it's been going all right. The fabrication side of it has been going all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a go today at making these panels, because once these panels are done, I can crack on. They're holding the job up. I can't do any of the underbody prep and paint until these are done, and then once the underbody's done, I can do the engine bay and the main body, and then the whole car's painted. So what I'll do is I'll talk you through the process today, how I'm going to do it. It's not necessarily the right or the wrong way, but this is how I'm going to do it. So here we go. So as from the last episode where we got the whole underbody in epoxy, I left these pieces because they needed welding, but ideally I would have liked to have gone and welded before I epoxied, but it's that essential to get it in, get the metal sealed up before it starts rusting, because this is what the whole underbody would have been like. This has been in my booth now for 3 weeks, and it's been quite humid, and the whole underbody would have been like that, and it would have needed another blast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off on this panel, and because I love working with wood, I picked these up out of someone's bin outside. Because I like working with wood, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a template that fits in there perfectly, yeah, beforehand. Notch it out for these strengthener parts here, and make a piece that fits in there. So then I've basically got a template, make it out of the wood, and then I can form the metal piece around the template, knock it around over on the edges, knock in these strengthener parts. So I'm going to start off by removing all the under seal, get it as clean as I can, so when I make the template it fits in there as tight as possible. All right, let's go. What I'll do is I'll show you the work I've been doing, a little bit of the work I've been doing on this 34. Now, if you know Skylines at all, you know that they tend to corrode around the strut tops at the front. And what happens is this is two parts, this is a two-piece overlapped, and it's spot welded on. And over the years, what happens is you start to get corrosion between the two, yeah, let's do it that way, the two panels. And the spot weld, they start to swell, they start to burst basically, because the rust starts to split them panels apart. So what I did is I cut out the top panel all the way to here. It's 2mm, which is pretty good. Sandblasted the back of it. It was pretty solid actually, and the strut top's pretty solid. So sandblasted it, epoxied it, and then basically welded it back in, and I'm quite impressed, and it looks pretty good. And the same on this side too. What you find a lot on these Nissans is it's between the two seams you start getting corrosion now. And what else we've done, we've put GTR arches on it. Yeah, obviously this is a GTT, so they're not as wide. The customer's got genuine Nissan arches, and they've obviously been cut and welded here, that's epoxy. But because the arch is wider, it sticks out past the inner arch, so I've had to cut out and put a band of steel all the way in there. There was also some corrosion down here that's all new, and there's also some corrosion down in here, that's all new. This is just in epoxy now, so it still needs seam sealing and all that. So whereas the welders are busy, I just had to step up, and I wouldn't say I really enjoy welding, but if you take your time and you make you fabricate the panels properly, it is pretty straightforward. So I just thought I'd crack on with this because it's holding the job up. If I can do that, I'm sure I can do this. Bit of an intricate panel. So we'll start forming. I'm going to get the wire wheel on this, remove all the seam sealer, and then get to the spot welds. I won't be able to get the spot welds from this side, I don't think. So I may have to drill through. But then when we put the piece back in, they can be either spot welded back in or plug welded, depends. Let's go. Let's get the grinder out. I love the grinder. I love power tools. So it's Sunday. On Friday, I took myself to A&E to have my eye scraped because I managed to get metal in it. 8 days earlier. I thought I had a bit of arc eye, but I didn't. I had metal in my eye. Great. That was 8 fun days with hardly any sleep. So, new eye protection. Wear it. Keep safe. Right, let's get the wire wheel and let's get this cracking. Right, that was easy enough. Right, so I've done a masking tape template of the area, put it in, trimmed it up and transferred it onto cardboard. So then I'm going to transfer it onto the wood and then transfer the metal onto that. Ugh. Anyway, so this fits in perfectly here, as tight as you can. So that goes in there, and then it means I can form the edges around it. If I cut it out first and then try to make the template, I've made that mistake before, it would probably turn out to be a bit big. So what I found with my welding is, making panels, if you can, make the panel before you cut anything out, because sometimes there's datum points where you need to just check and double check. So I'm going to transfer this onto the wood. I'm going to get the old jigsaw out, dust it off, cut that, and then hopefully that'll fit in. Then I can remove this panel and then I can start forming the new panel. And see, the thing is, if you take your time and you get the panels right, the welding is very, very straightforward. It's a little bit like the paint process. If you prep the panel right, take your time and get everything perfect, you literally spray paint on it and you're done, kind of. You know, but if you get it super clean and everything's perfectly flat, gun finish, bump, and it's out the door. If you get your panel right, put it in, you're literally going to be, let's put it this way, you're literally going to be 6 or 8 plug welds or 6 or 8 spot welds, and it's done, apart from obviously across the top. So let's get doing it. Suppose it would help if you could see me do the cutting, wouldn't it? It also helps when the wood's wet and it cuts rubbish. You know, so you got it out the skip. Use proper clean wood. Yeah, that's just my top tip for the day. How the hell am I going to do this now? Right. That went well, didn't it? This is so bloody awkward. there we go. It's all done. Obviously, it would have been better if I could have done this out of one piece of wood, you know, but it's Sunday, I'm hungover, and I'm doing the best I can. And what I've done is, let me get down here. I've done it just a little bit oversized, probably about 3 or 4 mil all the way around, because I want to fit perfect. And I'd rather use a belt sander or the air sander to sand it down bit by bit to get it perfect, rather than it be a little bit small, make the panel out of metal, and then have to do it all again. Right, let's roll. So there we go, the template is in. There's a slight curve on it, so which I'll have to have a play around with, but once that's down there. And as you can see, it's the inside, so when the metal's formed round the outside of a lip, we're going to have that there. And obviously a little bit of massaging, we'll be able to bring everything back into play, bring it nice and tight. So we're going to transfer it to metal now, and be having a play. So there we go, it's transferred to the metal. There's the original size of it, but remember you've got to add on probably about 15 mil, 15-20 mil, so it can be folded up and make the return. Obviously the size of that doesn't really matter because you want to do it oversized because you can trim it back afterwards. What is essential is that these fold lines are exactly where they should be. Now, so what I'm going to do is, this is why I've done it on the wood, oversize it. I'm going to screw it to this, and then I'm going to use a hammer and dolly and knock it all the way around to form it around that piece. Okay? Okay, so the metal's cut now. Can you see me? The metal's cut now. I've clamped a piece of wood underneath. And what I'm going to do, bit by bit, is hammer this, form this round it, not just whacking it, like sliding the hammer off. A spoon would be better, but, you know, I'm not a metal fab shop. To be honest, if you could form that piece a lot easier if you're in a fabrication shop, but it's Sunday and I'm here and I'm having a bit of fun. So, slowly knocking it round, and you'll see the lips starting to form, yeah? Take your time. It's going to be a bit difficult around this bit, so I may have to cut a couple of splices and then weld it up afterwards. Okay, wear your earphones as well, because the hammering gets quite loud. So, I'll probably time-lapse this bit now. Right, let's time-lapse. So here's the panel roughly formed. There was no way I was going to be able to form that round a 90. So what I've done is I cut a slit into it there, and for these around here I've cut slits just to make it a bit easy to form, and then obviously I'll weld them back up. Plus also it gives me a little bit of adjustment when it's on the car. I can put it in place, and then if they need pulling out a little bit, the angle's not quite right, because I formed them at a 90 degree, but I'm pretty sure they're not quite, they're more like 80 degrees. So I can get it in place, I can make sure it's right, I can mark it all up, and then I can basically spot weld all these in, well, MIG weld them in for me inside, grind it back, and even both sides if needs be. And there we go, there's the panel. What I'll do is now is I'll cut the old one out, we'll mark it up, because we do need to strengthen beads put in here, or whatever they're called, gussets or whatever. I'll put the word up right here, what it is. I can form those to strengthen the panel up and to make it look factory as well, so when it's welded in and seam sealed over, well, epoxied and seam sealed, you won't be able to tell. Okay, I'm quite lucky with the 185 I've got, that usually these are just completely non-existent. They just completely rust from the inside out, and I'm quite lucky I've only got to do one side. I did think I was going to have to do two, but it'll have to be sandblasted it, the other side's okay. Right, so let's, I'll get drilling and cutting the old piece out, and we'll see how it fits. Okay, so there's just a bit of seam sealer here. I've cleaned it off, and there's one spot weld, there's another. Now, like I said before, whether I'm going to be able to get the drill in here and remove these ones. Can you see where it's pinched? And also you can see where, we talked about the skyline before, about the rust opening seams up. That's what it does. So, I'm going to try and get these out. I'm going to try and get these ones out. If I can't, I'll get them from this side. And failing that, because it's only 2 skin there, I might cut through any odd ones. Because I'd like to keep this side intact. I like to be plugging from this side if I can, plug welding. But, oh, there's a socket in there. Socket extension. Free tools. So, yeah, and what I'll do is I will cut the panel across here. I won't do it here because you don't want to be messing around having to join these, strengthen the parts up, or gussets or whatever they're called. So I'll cut it across here as the last thing to do, missing there. And then the new panel, what I'll do is I'll joggle it in, and I'll show you that at a later date. So I'm not butt welding it all together. I'll put a little step in the other part so it'll slip underneath, and then welding across. So you're welding to a stronger bit. Okay, and then I'm going to get my full-on Toyota Motorsport tongue and groove wood to make the template. I used to be a kitchen fitter, so I do like working with wood actually. Any excuse I get. But it's unlike metal, you can't add anything onto it when you cut it wrong. So I make the template out of cardboard, out of wood, let's go. Right, okay, as you can see, the panel has been fully removed. I have drilled the spot welds from the outside. So that's literally where I will plug weld from there, all the way around. All on the factory weld. The only cut I have made is the one across the top here, because this panel goes all the way into here, all the way across and down. What I didn't realise was this breather pipe's there. So I'll cut into that too, so I'm going to have to plastic weld that up, and then maybe put something in to stop it melting it when I re-weld it. I might put a strip of exhaust heat wrap in there. Yeah. So that's the hole, all nice and tidy. I'm ready for priming. I might do a bit of corrosion treatment down in there. And the panel is, I've skipped a little bit. There's the panel there. I've had to make a bit of a modification because behind there is that lip. And I basically put these divots in it for the strengthening parts where you've got to expand and contract the metal, shrink it back up to match the ones up there. Can you see? They're not perfect, but they're not bad. So this is going, I'm trying to do this with one hand. So, yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to protect all the bare metal, and I'm going to epoxy this panel, epoxy prime it, and then leave it overnight, and then tomorrow I will grind off the minimum needed to weld. For instance, I'm never going to be able to paint in between these seams. If I epoxy it tonight, leave the panel, then when I come to weld, what I do is, let's get down there, I scratch in the hole, scratch, get it back to bare metal, and then plug weld that. Then I know there's epoxy in between there as much as possible, and then obviously re-epoxy and seam seal and whatever. So 5 hours to cut it out, make the panel, do this and do that, but it's going to be worth it because it's, you know, it needs doing. I'll feather all this back in as well. Right, and then when that one's done, I'm going to go on to this one, which is, I was originally going to drill the spot welds out and then take this out and remake the whole piece. But what I think I'm going to do is, because obviously it's been jacked up here and that's what's stretched the metal, pierced it somewhere, and then water's got in here over the years and just started corroding it from the inside out. So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to cut it along here and along here, and then underneath there and there. And then once that's cut, maybe cut this whole section out, hammer and dolly this flat again, and then make a new piece with thread a nut on the back all welded in, and then weld it back in. Boom. Like I said before, the main thing is then I can get epoxy on the inside of it, can't I, and I can protect it. Right, so here's a panel all clamped up with mole grips, as you do, just to check fitment. And obviously these gaps will be pushed up. When you plug weld, you clamp each individual weld first, so that'll be all clamped up. But the original, it had seam sealer in there as well, so I'm going to paint this like I just mentioned, and then I'm probably going to seam it up. It's going to be a bit of a tricky one welding when the seam are in there, but yeah, seam it up. I think that's come out pretty well, to be honest. So let's get the paint out. Right, so there we go. That's the inside of the panel, sprayed with some well, brush painted with some epoxy, and then a little bit of weld through primer aerosoled along here. When I'm doing bits like this, I do prefer to brush paint my epoxy on. It's never going to be seen, and you can get it into seams a lot better. You know, you can get it quite wet and get it running in, because, you know, places like this where prone to corrosion, it's really important that you do everything you possibly can to stop that reoccurring. You've gone this far with a job, you know, do that extra little bit just to, you know, try and preserve things as long as possible. Could be a difference between another 5 or 10 years, that. Right, and I've epoxied the other panels to the ones I've made. So yeah, boom. Come back tomorrow and weld it all back up. Morning. Just going to plastic weld up this cut I've managed to put in this vent pipe. It doesn't actually do a lot, but it just helps ventilate this area. So got a little plastic welder and stapler thing here. Obviously use it for stapling together plastic bumpers. But this you just press the button, it heats up. I'm going to try and melt the splits back together, and I can add a bit of plastic if needs be. Well, it's not my neatest job in the world, but it's fully sealed up now, and I'll probably put a piece of duct tape over it just to make sure it's completely airtight. And then when I weld, I'm gonna have to either put a piece of aluminium in there to protect it from the heat of welding, or like I said earlier in the video, I've got some exhaust heat wrap, so I might jam that in there as well, because no heat will get through that. And then I can pull it out afterwards, can't I? Right, let's roll. So here's the panel, all epoxied, left it overnight to cure. It's basically ready to go and then be welded now. But what I've done before I'm going to weld, as you can see, I've scratched the paint away from where the plug welds are going to be, because obviously you can't make a weld between paint and metal. So back to metal, and that'll hopefully all fuse together, and then obviously I can re-epoxy it when it's all in. So let's get a welder out. Weldy time. I'm not the world's best welder, but the main thing is you got to understand, you're not just blobbing it together, you're trying to fuse the two panels together, so you do need to get enough heat in there. But this here is very, very thin, probably about 0.8 now. So the main structural welds are going to be these plug welds round here. The main ones for these is you're never going to be able to link weld them, you're just going to have to spot weld them, and you don't want to put too much heat in one area because it might distort. So up here it may not be the prettiest, but you can always grind it back, and it is always going to be seam sealed, well, epoxied and seam sealed afterwards. So I'll probably time lapse this bit but then I'll show you some of the plug welds a bit closer. Here we go. I am your father. Right, so there I am cracking on, and look at the camera and I haven't pressed record. Great. So, please don't judge me on my welding. This hasn't been ground back yet, just gone over it with a wire wheel to show you. So, it's spot welded all the way across here. You've got to be really careful. This is really thin. I would say it's 0.8 now, because it's weathered. But where do you stop? Do you know what I mean? So, that's all done, that's tight, we're all solid. We're solid in there. They've done the plug welds, but I've ground them off. But there's one there, ready to be ground. You can see the penetration. So yeah, it's all ready. It doesn't look the tidiest, but it's absolutely solid. And compared to, you ready? Compared to that came out, to that, I think I've done all right. Now, it has taken me in total a full day to do this, but it would have taken, well, majority of welders that length of time to do it. Obviously, if I did another one, the other side, I'd probably have to shave a couple of hours off it. But you can see here from the inside that the original primer has held up really well. It's obviously this section here where water gets in. So the seam, I'm going to epoxy prime all this, and then I'm going to let it all run in there as much as possible, and then take my time with the seam sealing and make sure it's all seamed up as best I can to stop any water getting in there. And then obviously it will all be wax oils from the inside. So there we go. I think that's turned out pretty well. You can do it. It's just, you've got to just take your time. Yeah, quite happy. On with the next. So very quickly, what I've done on this little piece here is I've just cut out what needed to be cut out. I've sandblasted it inside. I've epoxied it. I've made a new piece that's going to go in there like so. It's all going to be welded up. So I'll do that now. I'll try and get a bit of welding for you. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's absolutely solid. I've ground down as much of the weld as I dare. The trick when you're grinding after welding is just to grind the actual weld itself, not to grind the whole lot, because you can make the metal very thin very quick. So I'll ground it back as best I can, and then a bit of epoxy, a bit of seam sealer, and you'll never know it's there. quick look before I smother it in epoxy. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? I could have ground the welds down a little bit more here and here, but I didn't want to risk anything. It's borderline as it is. And over here, we'll have a quick look at this one last time before I epoxy it. Again, I haven't ground them down completely flat. Yeah, we've got all the welds around here. I'm trying cinematic mode on my new phone. It's not working too well. So, scuff, epoxy, boom. Right, there we go. In epoxy, protected, boom, and down here, that is in epoxy, and that's looking really nice. It's looking really tight round there. It's pretty well up there. If we compare it to the original, that's what the original looks like. Obviously, you can see the gaps there where moisture can penetrate. So, it's in, it's epoxied, it's nice and tight, it's absolutely secure. So there we go, another job ticked off a list. There's just one more panel to do, which is this one, which looks a nightmare. I think I'm going to need an English wheel to do it, but we'll have a play. So, bit of a long-winded one today, but we're so close now to getting the body in paint. I'm getting excited, I can feel it. Take it easy, guys. See you later.